14-year-old Marcus clutched his ticket, his heart thumping with excitement. Today was the day. His first solo flight. He was going to visit his grandma in Florida for the summer. He'd packed his favorite video games, a new book about space, and a bag full of snacks. He walked through the busy airport, his backpack bouncing against his back. He found his gate and took a seat, watching the planes take off and land. He imagined himself soaring through the clouds, a tiny speck against the vast blue sky. This trip meant everything. He hadn't seen Grandma in over a year, and he missed her stories, her warm hugs, and her amazing cooking. He couldn't wait to tell her all about his school year, his friends, and his dreams of becoming an astronaut. He pulled out his phone and sent her a quick text. "Almost there. Grandma. See you soon." He looked around at the other passengers, families with young children, business travelers with laptops, and couples holding hands. Everyone seemed to be in their own little world, eager to reach their destinations. Marcus felt a sense of independence and adventure. He was ready for this. This was his first big step into adulthood. He took a deep breath and smiled. The adventure was about to begin. He just hoped the flight wouldn't be too bumpy. Brenda, a seasoned flight attendant with over 20 years of experience, adjusted her scarf and surveyed the passengers boarding the plane. She prided herself on her ability to spot potential problems before they arose. She had seen it all: unruly children, nervous flyers, and the occasional passenger who had a little too much to drink before the flight. As Marcus walked down the aisle, Brenda's eyes lingered on him. He was a tall, lanky black teenager with a backpack and headphones around his neck. Something about him made her uneasy. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she felt a sense of suspicion creeping in. He seemed too quiet. She watched him as he found his seat near the back of the plane. He stowed his bag and immediately pulled out his phone. Brenda frowned. Was he texting someone? Making secret plans? Her imagination started to run wild. She told herself she was just being cautious, that it was her job to ensure the safety of all the passengers. But a nagging feeling persisted. He just didn't look like he belonged. She decided to keep a close eye on him throughout the flight. She felt it was her duty. She straightened her uniform, trying to shake off her unease. After all, it was probably nothing. Just a kid going to see his grandma. But still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Brenda continued to observe Marcus from the galley, her eyes darting back to him every few minutes. He was now engrossed in his phone, thumbs flying across the screen. Brenda squinted, trying to see what he was doing. Was he playing a game? Or was he communicating with someone? Her mind raced, conjuring up images of nefarious plots and dangerous schemes. He shifted in his seat, pulling his backpack onto his lap. He rummaged through it, pulling out a bag of chips. Brenda's eyes narrowed. Why did he need a bag of chips? Was it a distraction? A way to conceal something? She saw him glance around nervously, or at least that's how she interpreted it. In reality, he was just checking to see if anyone wanted to share. Then he started fidgeting. He tapped his foot, adjusted his headphones, and looked out the window. Brenda took this as further evidence of his unease. Clearly, he was nervous about something. He was hiding something. She was now convinced of it. Every innocent action, every normal teenage behavior was filtered through her lens of suspicion, twisted into something sinister. She saw him reach into his pocket and pull out what looked like a small metallic object. Her heart pounded. Was it a weapon? A tool? She had to act. She couldn't risk the safety of the other passengers. She had to report him. Now. Brenda discreetly made her way to the front of the plane and grabbed the phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed the airport security number. She took a deep breath, trying to sound calm and professional. "This is Brenda, flight attendant on flight 349 to Orlando," she said, her voice tight. "I need to report a potential security threat on board." The person on the other end of the line listened patiently as Brenda described Marcus, carefully avoiding any overtly racist language but emphasizing her gut feeling that something was wrong. She mentioned his age, his race, his suspicious behavior, the phone, the fidgeting, the metallic object, which was actually just a small multi-tool. She painted a picture of a dangerous young man, a potential menace to the safety of the flight. She exaggerated her concerns, embellishing the details to make her case seem more convincing. She knew she was taking a risk, but she believed she was doing the right thing. "I believe this passenger needs to be questioned before takeoff," she concluded, her voice firm. "I don't want to cause a scene, but I can't ignore my instincts." She hung up the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she had set something in motion, something that could have serious consequences for Marcus. But she told herself it was all for the best. She had done her duty. She had protected her passengers. Now all she could do was wait. A few minutes later, 2 uniformed police officers boarded the plane. Marcus, still engrossed in his game, didn't notice them at first. Brenda pointed them towards his seat, a smug look on her face. The officers approached Marcus, their expressions stern. "Excuse me, son," one of them said, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of the other passengers. "We need to talk to you." Marcus looked up, startled. His eyes widened as he saw the officers standing over him. "Me? What's wrong?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "We've received a report about some concerning behavior," the officer replied, his gaze fixed on Marcus. "We need you to step off the plane with us for questioning." Marcus's face flushed with confusion and fear. "But I didn't do anything," he protested, his voice rising in panic. "I'm just going to see my grandma." The officers were unmoved. "We understand, son, but we need you to cooperate," one of them said, placing a hand on Marcus's arm. "Let's go." Other passengers began to whisper and stare. Marcus felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. He was being treated like a criminal, and he had no idea why. He reluctantly stood up, his legs shaking, and followed the officers off the plane, leaving his backpack and belongings behind. He glanced back at Brenda, who avoided his gaze. His dream trip was turning into a nightmare. Back inside the terminal, Marcus was led to a small, sterile room. The officers sat him down at a table and began to question him. "What's your name?" one of them asked, his voice stern. "Marcus Johnson," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. "Where are you going?" "To Florida, to see my grandma," he said, tears welling up in his eyes. "Do you have any weapons or illegal substances on you?" "No. I swear. I just have my phone, my games, and some snacks." They asked him about his family, his friends, his school. They asked him if he had ever been in trouble with the law. Each question felt like a punch to the gut. He answered truthfully, but his fear grew with each passing moment. He felt trapped, judged, and completely helpless. Meanwhile, back on the plane, the passengers were growing restless. The delay was stretching on, and people were starting to complain. Murmurs of "what's going on" and "why are we waiting" filled the cabin. Brenda tried to maintain a calm facade, but inside she was starting to feel a flicker of doubt. Had she overreacted? Was she wrong about Marcus? The captain announced that there was a minor security issue and that they would be taking off as soon as possible. The passengers grumbled, eager to reach their destinations. But for Marcus, the delay was just adding to his mounting anxiety and despair. He just wanted to go see his grandma. Just as Marcus was starting to lose hope, the door to the interrogation room swung open. One of the officers, looking slightly sheepish, entered. "Marcus Johnson?" he asked. "We're very sorry for the inconvenience. You're free to go." Marcus blinked, stunned. "What? But why?" "There was a misunderstanding," the officer explained vaguely. "You're all clear to board the flight." Marcus didn't understand what had happened, but he wasn't going to argue. He grabbed his backpack and hurried back to the gate, his heart still pounding. As he approached, he saw a woman standing near the boarding area. She was tall and elegant with a commanding presence. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, and her eyes scanned the crowd with an intensity that made people step aside. She caught sight of Marcus and her expression softened. She rushed towards him, her face a mixture of relief and anger. "Marcus," she exclaimed, pulling him into a tight hug. "Are you okay? What happened?" Before Marcus could answer, she turned to the gate agent, her voice laced with steel. "I am Agent Johnson," she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "And I want to know why my son was detained." The temperature at the gate seemed to drop 10 degrees. All eyes were on her. The gate agent, flustered, stammered, "Ma'am, we just received a report of some suspicious activity." Agent Johnson cut her off, her voice like ice. "Suspicious activity? My son is a 14-year-old boy on his way to visit his grandmother. What exactly was so suspicious?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, leather wallet. She flipped it open, revealing a badge and identification card. "Agent Johnson," she repeated, her eyes locking onto the gate agents. "Director of the Central Intelligence Agency." A collective gasp rippled through the gate area. Brenda, who had been watching from the plane, felt her jaw drop. The CIA chief? That teenager's mother was the head of the CIA? She couldn't believe it. Agent Johnson's gaze swept across the crowd, landing on the 2 police officers who had questioned Marcus. They visibly paled. She then turned her attention back to the gate agent, her expression unwavering. "I expect a full explanation," she said, her voice dangerously low. "And I expect it now." The air crackled with tension. Marcus, still shaken, stood beside his mother, feeling a strange mix of fear and awe. He had always known his mom was important, but he had never realized just how important. This was a side of her he had never seen before. Brenda watched in stunned silence as the scene unfolded at the gate. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her. Her carefully constructed world of assumptions and biases was crumbling before her eyes. The teenager she had deemed a potential threat was the son of one of the most powerful women in the country. The metallic object she had feared was a weapon was probably just a harmless tool. She saw the gate agent, now practically trembling, trying to explain the situation to Agent Johnson. The police officers stood nearby, looking like they wanted to disappear. The passengers, who had been complaining about the delay just moments before, were now silent, their faces a mixture of awe and embarrassment. Brenda knew she had made a terrible mistake. A mistake fueled by prejudice and fear. A mistake that had caused unnecessary distress to an innocent young man. She wanted to apologize, to explain, but she couldn't find the words. She was paralyzed by shame and regret. She imagined what Agent Johnson must be feeling. The anger, the protectiveness, the outrage. She had judged Marcus based on his appearance, and she had almost ruined his trip. And now she had to face the consequences. The weight of her actions pressed down on her, suffocating her with guilt. She knew her career, her reputation, everything was on the line. And she deserved it. Agent Johnson listened intently as the gate agent and the police officers stammered out their explanations, carefully omitting the biased assumptions that had led to Marcus's detention. She allowed them to speak, her expression unreadable, before finally cutting them off. "That's enough," she said, her voice firm but controlled. "I understand there was a mistake. A regrettable mistake based on inaccurate information." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "My son is an honor student, a kind and respectful young man who poses no threat to anyone. He was simply excited about visiting his grandmother." She turned to the police officers. "I trust you'll be taking this incident as a learning opportunity. Racial profiling is unacceptable and will not be tolerated." She then addressed the gate agent. "I expect my son to be treated with the respect he deserves for the remainder of his journey." Finally, she turned to Marcus, her expression softening. "Come on, honey," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Let's get you on that plane." She led him towards the boarding area, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. As they walked, she whispered, "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, baby. But don't let it get you down. You're a strong, smart young man, and you deserve to have a wonderful vacation." Marcus squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. He knew he was lucky to have her as his mom. As Marcus and Agent Johnson reboarded the plane, the flight attendants, including Brenda, stood at attention, their faces etched with a mixture of embarrassment and respect. The passengers, who had witnessed the entire ordeal, offered Marcus sympathetic glances. The captain approached Agent Johnson, offering profuse apologies for the delay and the inconvenience. He assured her that Marcus would be given preferential treatment for the remainder of the flight. He then turned to Brenda, his expression stern. "Brenda, I want to see you in my office after we reach Orlando," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Brenda nodded, her face pale. She knew she was in serious trouble. Agent Johnson, ever the professional, accepted the captain's apologies with grace. She found Marcus's seat and helped him settle in. She made sure he had everything he needed, a blanket, a pillow, and a fresh drink. She then turned to the passengers seated nearby and offered a warm smile. "Thank you for your patience," she said. "I appreciate your understanding." As the plane finally took off, Marcus looked out the window, his heart filled with a mixture of emotions. He was still shaken by what had happened, but he was also incredibly grateful for his mother's unwavering support. He knew that she would always be there for him, no matter what. He closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of his grandma's warm hugs and delicious cookies. The flight, at least for him, was finally peaceful. Later that evening, after Marcus had arrived safely at his grandmother's house, Agent Johnson made a private call to the airline's CEO. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't make threats, but she made her expectations crystal clear. Brenda needed to undergo extensive sensitivity training and demonstrate a genuine commitment to overcoming her biases. The next day, Brenda received a formal letter from the airline, outlining the required training and a probationary period. She knew this was her last chance to save her career. She reluctantly enrolled in the courses, but as she listened to the stories and experiences of others, something began to shift within her. She started to understand the impact of her actions, the pain and humiliation she had inflicted on Marcus. She reached out to Agent Johnson, sending a heartfelt letter expressing her sincere apologies. She explained that she was committed to learning from her mistakes and becoming a better person. She didn't expect forgiveness, but she wanted Agent Johnson to know that she was truly sorry. Agent Johnson, after careful consideration, responded to Brenda's letter. She acknowledged Brenda's apology and encouraged her to continue on her path of self-improvement. She emphasized that true change required sustained effort and a willingness to confront one's own prejudices. She also made a point of saying that she hoped Brenda would treat all future passengers with fairness and respect. She ended her letter by saying, "We all make mistakes, it is what we learn from them that matters." Back on the plane, the atmosphere was still tense, but there was a sense of cautious optimism. The flight attendants, eager to make amends, showered Marcus with attention, offering him extra snacks and drinks. He politely declined, still feeling a little shaken but also touched by their efforts. As the plane neared Orlando, the captain made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I want to take a moment to address the earlier delay. We understand that it caused some inconvenience, and we sincerely apologize for that. We also want to emphasize that we are committed to providing a safe and welcoming environment for all of our passengers. We do not tolerate discrimination of any kind." He continued, his voice sincere, "We are taking steps to ensure that incidents like this do not happen again. We believe that everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or background." The passengers applauded, appreciating the captain's words. Marcus smiled, feeling a sense of closure. He knew that the incident had been a difficult experience, but he was glad that it had sparked a conversation about the importance of fairness and equality. He hoped that others would learn from it, as Brenda seemed to be doing, and that the world would become a more just and compassionate place. The landing was smooth and gentle. After the plane landed, Brenda sat in the captain's office, her heart pounding. The captain, a kind but firm man, listened patiently as she explained her actions, her voice trembling with remorse. "Brenda," he said, "I understand that you were trying to ensure the safety of our passengers. But your actions were based on assumptions and biases, and that is simply unacceptable. You need to understand the impact of your words and actions on others." He outlined the steps she would need to take to keep her job, the sensitivity training, the probationary period, and a commitment to changing her mindset. He also emphasized that any future incidents would result in immediate termination. Brenda listened carefully, absorbing every word. She knew she had a long road ahead of her, but she was determined to make amends. She realized that she had been living in a bubble surrounded by her own prejudices and fears. She needed to open her mind, to challenge her assumptions, and to learn to see people for who they truly were, not for what they looked like. She left the captain's office with a heavy heart, but also with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the journey would be difficult, but she was ready to embark on it. She wanted to be a better person, a more compassionate flight attendant, and a positive force in the world. She would not let this incident define her. She would use it as an opportunity to grow and to learn. Meanwhile, at Orlando International Airport, Marcus stepped off the plane and into his grandmother's waiting arms. "Grandma," he exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "I missed you so much." "Oh, baby," she said, her voice filled with love. "I missed you too. I'm so glad you're finally here." As they walked towards the baggage claim, Marcus told her about his flight, carefully omitting the details of his encounter with Brenda and the police. He didn't want to worry her. He just wanted to enjoy his summer vacation. When they arrived at his grandma's cozy little house, a surprise awaited him. Agent Johnson was there, waiting with a warm smile. "Mom," Marcus exclaimed, running to hug her. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to make sure you got here safe and sound," she said, her eyes filled with love. "And I wanted to spend a little time with my favorite people." Grandma Johnson beamed. "It's so good to have you both here," she said. "Let me get you something to eat. I made your favorite cookies, Marcus." As they sat around the kitchen table, sharing stories and laughter, Marcus felt a sense of peace and happiness wash over him. He was surrounded by love and support, and he knew that everything was going to be all right. The summer vacation he had been dreaming of was finally beginning. That night, after Grandma Johnson had gone to bed, Agent Johnson sat down with Marcus on the porch swing. The air was warm and humid, and the crickets chirped in the background. "So," she said, her voice gentle, "tell me what really happened on that plane." Marcus hesitated, then slowly recounted the entire story, from Brenda's suspicious glances to the police interrogation. He described his fear, his humiliation, and his confusion. Agent Johnson listened patiently, her expression unwavering. When he finished, she pulled him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you, Marcus," she said. "You handled a difficult situation with grace and courage. And I'm so sorry you had to experience that." She continued, "What happened to you wasn't right. It was based on prejudice and ignorance, and it's something that we need to fight against every day. Never let anyone make you feel ashamed of who you are. You are a smart, kind, and valuable person, and you deserve to be treated with respect." She paused, then added, "This doesn't define you, Marcus. You are stronger than this. You are more than this. Don't ever forget that." Marcus leaned into his mother's embrace, feeling a renewed sense of strength and determination. He knew that the incident on the plane would always be a part of his story, but it wouldn't define him. He would use it as a reminder to stand up for himself and for others and to never let prejudice win. He was ready for his summer vacation, and he was ready to face whatever challenges life might throw his way. He was Marcus Johnson, and he was proud of who he was. The summer flew by in a blur of sunshine, laughter, and delicious food. Marcus spent his days swimming in the pool, playing video games with his cousins, and listening to his grandma's stories. Agent Johnson visited whenever she could, always making time for Marcus and Grandma Johnson despite her demanding job. Brenda, meanwhile, diligently completed her sensitivity training, learning about the history of racial discrimination and the importance of empathy and understanding. She volunteered at a local community center, working with underprivileged youth and gaining a new perspective on life. She even started a diversity and inclusion initiative at the airline, advocating for a more equitable and welcoming environment for all passengers. 1 year later, Marcus was preparing for another solo flight to visit his grandma. As he boarded the plane, he noticed a familiar face among the flight attendants. It was Brenda. She recognized him immediately, her eyes widening in surprise. She approached him cautiously, a nervous smile on her face. "Marcus," she asked, her voice tentative. "Is that you?" Marcus looked at her, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He remembered her suspicion, her judgment, and the fear he had felt on that day. But he also saw the remorse in her eyes, the genuine effort she had made to change. He smiled. "Hi, Brenda," he said. "It's good to see you." Brenda smiled, relief washing over her. "I'm so glad to see you too, Marcus," she said. I just want to say that I'm really sorry for what happened last year. I was wrong, and I've learned a lot since then." Marcus nodded, acknowledging her apology. "It's okay, Brenda," he said. "I appreciate you saying that." As Marcus walked to his seat, he couldn't help but smile. He realized that the incident on the plane, while initially frightening and humiliating, had ultimately led to positive change. It had forced Brenda to confront her biases, it had sparked a conversation about racial profiling, and it had strengthened his bond with his mother. He settled into his seat, feeling a sense of optimism and hope. He knew that the world wasn't perfect, but he also knew that people were capable of learning and growing. He was ready for his summer vacation, and he was ready to face whatever challenges life might throw his way. He was Marcus Johnson, and he was ready to make a difference. The flight to Orlando was smooth and uneventful. As he deplaned, he glanced back at Brenda, who offered him a warm smile. He knew that they had both come a long way since that day, and he was grateful for the opportunity to start anew. The end.